So we're talking to Bob Berger, the CEO of KC Jones Plating in Warren, Michigan. Bob, I appreciate you joining us today.
Well, good morning, Tim. Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Great. Like I said, it's you've been in the. I know you started in the in this industry. I think when you were in high school, right? You're a family-owned operation, and what year was that you first started? You know, either racking parts or sweeping floors or whatever that they had you doing back then.
It would be going in on Saturdays, probably when I was 7 or 8 years old, when Dad first started the business. So yeah, I mean, you go in during the summertime. It was more probably babysitting than it was actually working in the business. But you get used to the people, you get used to the environment, and it was intriguing. And same thing with college. So
was that something you wanted? Yeah, I was going to say, is that something you always wanted to do? Was it predestined that you were going to be, working and running this operation, or was it not?
I think after college, I was wanted to express my own independence, and so it would say the opposite was true. So I went off, ended up in the AC spark plug division of General Motors, and lo and behold, I ended up operating from a quality function, plating and heat treating operations in the plant. So maybe that's what predestined the balance of my career. I was going to say, there's so few people that have a familiarity with metal finishing that even at GM, they'd say, you know something about plating? Guess what, Bob? Guess where you're going? So anyway, yeah, the way it started.
Yeah. I was going to say, a lot of people I know that that are sort of in a family-grown business and such, and it helps them to work at sometimes outside the family business for a bit, just to see how business runs. To work for somebody other than your father or your uncle or your cousin, whatever. How did that help you kind of shape as you got ready to come back into the family organization?
Well, I think it gave me appreciation for an organization. To have people that you were responsible to report to on time. I mean, let's face it. We all, as we grow up, report to our parents in a slightly different fashion than we do to other adults like teachers or what have you. Even the next door neighbor, your buddy's father, you talk to them differently than you talk to your dad. And that's one of the big challenges, I think, of family businesses. And, from the kids' side, it takes them a while to shake the idea that, oh, yeah, this will blow over too. I need to be responsible, whether or not he's my father. When he asks me to get something done, I better get it done.
Right. How many years did you work at General Motors overall with that?
It was 10.
Wow. That was a career in itself. You're right. Yeah. And so how did the transition coming back? Did your father ask you to come back, or was that something you all had a discussion on about that?
Well, we'd had conversations on and off, and as he approached, let's say his early 60s and was looking at what he was going to do post-retirement, we had one of those conversations one night where he said, son, it's time to make a decision. And I looked at the opportunity. I looked at the bureaucracy, frankly, of an organization the size of General Motors. Luckily, during my time at GM, they had given me a great deal of freedom. And I'd spent 2 years on the road going to all the OEM plants that AC supplied. And I found that I had far less freedom when I got back to the plant. And so I think that's what I started appreciating the kind of freedom you could have as the owner or senior manager of a smaller operation.
Right. When you came back, and like you said, I know that it kind of around you took over, and like I said, I know your father had some partners, and then kind of the mid '80s when you kind of made a decision that it would be probably best interest for you to own the entire company. Correct? Is that how
it's slightly different? Dad decided that we should own the whole thing. It's a funny story. I was somewhat opposed to it. I said, we had 3 operations at that particular time. I said, why cut some of it up, carve it up? We're just now growing. And he said, when the something very, very intelligent. He said, son, just because Al and I got along well together for 25 years doesn't mean that you and his son will. And it was a very, very profound statement.
Right. Yeah. Well, but that was a very big, I'm sure a financial challenge and an operational challenge to do that, right? To go kind of take over everything at once, right?
Yes. Yeah. It was. And,
yeah.
It was a bold move for him more so than me.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Unlike a lot of like I said, even plating shops, but let alone family plating shops, you all expanded. Like I said, you had several operations going, right? I mean, what was the thought process behind that? Was just the kind of the diversity, or just having a lot of, not all the eggs in one basket? Talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I combination of things. Anytime we were moving towards automotive, and anytime you can get a part out of an automotive plant, the more value-added processes you can impart to those parts, the better off you are. I mean, you're dealing with logistic issues, packing them up, getting them out of a GM or a Ford plant, getting them into your plant, unpacking them. So if you can heat treat it and plate it or paint it or what have you, those all, in a sense, make it an easier sale.
Right. Right. Definitely with that. Yeah. At the time when you were, getting involved in taking over the industry, the finishing industry, much as it is now, but back then it was really going through a big transformation, right? There was a lot more, a lot of regulatory issues. I think that was right around the time the EPA was really, cracking down a little more. Talk about that. I mean, it was very tough to own a finishing operation at that time, wasn't it?
It was. That was the first major capital, where the largest capital investment at the time, I think, was made in '83 or '84, when we were putting in complete waste treatment systems for the plants. And the technology wasn't all that well developed, and so you were hoping you had the right vendor and the right equipment to do the job you needed to have done. But it's
right. We're out of time too. I know you. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think way back then, the feds, when they came up with those rules, they fully expected 30% of the industry to go out of business, and they were very accurate. That's probably what happened. That was very accurate for that time.
Wow. Like I said, about that time, I mean, you became very active in the Finishing Association at the time, the NAMF. You became very active. Was that something that, I guess, to sort of just, get at the forefront and, and start networking with others around the country and kind of seeing what they were doing? What was the impetus for you to kind of really, dive into that and get involved with the national associations as well?
Well, I think a big part of it was I didn't know that much. I mean, I came out of a big organization. I had a list of chemists. I had a list of metallurgists. I had production control people, all helping me do what I had to do and help me be successful. You get into a small business, you're a jack of all trades, master of none. And my dad had encouraged me to get involved with the association, meet some people, network a little bit, and it became my greatest resource for information, my greatest resource for education, both technically and meeting with other owners and seeing and talking to them about how they went about things.
Right. I was going to say, almost therapeutic, I think, sometimes to talk to somebody, say, in Texas or California or New York, who is sitting in the same chair you are, facing the same challenges every day. It must have been a good stress relief to be able to sometimes just to talk with them and share ideas and thoughts sometimes.
Well, I mean, I can think back to some conversations where I would be totally at a loss of what to do. Not wondering, and have the other guy pick up the phone and laugh and say, "Oh, no problem. We did that 3 or 4 years ago, and this is what you got to do." So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, so you were very instrumental. I know you were the last, technically the last NAMF president, right? You, at the time when things were sort of, either kind of falling apart and coming together, which is today what the NASF is. And that was a very, again, a tough time, wasn't it? I mean, you had to kind of bring everybody together, bring them to the table. That was a very tough challenge, wasn't it, to be a part of that and really bring what people today, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was. There were a lot of emotions going on. The three associations all had distinct personalities, but it was very clear at that particular point in time we could not maintain the overhead of three separate organizations and three organizations with three different paths. It was something that simply had to happen.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, and it wasn't easy. I know it was not easy to do that. And I know that some people tell me there was, sometimes you get together at meetings in Chicago or wherever it is and a lot of loud voices and things. But I think you and a couple others really saw the vision of what needed to be done, correct?
Well, I don't know if I saw the vision. I chuckle that the guy that was most influential in getting me involved in the association was David Marsh. And David just sort of instructed me. He says, "This is what's got to happen, Berger. Now get it done."
Easier said than done, right? With that, and it was good. Talk about some of the people. Like I said, when you actually, some of those people that were sort of mentors to you, Dave Marsh and a couple others. I mean, there were some people that some of them are still with us, some of us have passed on, but a lot of people I'm sure had influences on you, mentorships. Can you talk about some of those people that come to mind?
I almost don't even know where to start. And certainly David Marsh and Bill Desjardins, Paul Saucy, locally were a big influence. Nationally, Digger Odell. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on. I hate to just mention a few and leave the others out. We had the opportunity to take a couple of trade tours. You become very close to people. It became probably the source of my best friends. I mean, it was a good experience.
Well, you talk about that. It is such a, it really, the industry is not just something you go and you clock in 9 to 5. I mean, like you said, you go to conferences, you meet these people, you vacation with them, you become very good buddies with them. And that's important really, isn't it? In any type of industry is to build those relationships and be able to, sort of, sit back and relax sometime, but also to rely on people for support and help, like just pick up a phone call and ask somebody. I mean, it had to be very, I don't see that happening a lot these days. It seems like everybody's kind of closed. They don't want to talk with a lot of people. But back then, I mean, you all did sort of have very open communications with each other, didn't you?
Well, I think one of the things we lost when we merged the three associations, the NAMF, which was the business owners side of the association, was mostly driven by local chapters or local groups and didn't have as well a developed national organization. And so it made a more cohesive group of finishers in each locale. The other two associations were nationally driven, and we've gravitated more towards the national model than we did the local model. If anything, and if I would offer any advice, I would wish the management of the association would take a harder look at providing support to local chapters, because that's where the communication and education really needs to start. Although I'm getting old, I mean, I hear you can learn all this stuff.
Definitely.
But
that's true. Yes, that's true. It's funny. I was going to mention, you were a GM, a manager, right? I mean, and when you became, like I said, joining, joining the shop and everything, and then eventually becoming, the owner and the president. What are the toughest things about being that person at the very top? I mean, some people thrive at it. Some people are not very good at being owners, or you got to make tough decisions. But what helped you along those ways to do that?
Well, I'll go right back again to the relationships developed in the association. I mean, that networking was invaluable.
Right. Yeah. Getting to talk to people. It's funny is that you all had been pretty. I know you're still involved. I know your son Mark is taking over as president now. But you all did some things that a lot of shops really wouldn't dare do, which was, like you said, expansion. I mean, buying other. I know you bought one in kind of in Indiana, and you opened up a location in Mexico. Those were big decisions to make, right? I mean, what led into that, and what kind of gave you the inspiration to do that, and also the assurance that this could work for you?
Well, I'm not sure if there was much in the way of assurance that it would work. Let's be honest. A big part of it's ego. The other part is as we see the industry changing, there's a lot of consolidation going on. The customer base is far broader. A Mercedes-Benz, a BMW, Hyundai have maybe not different requirements, but they have different asks, and they want to see a different level of sophistication in the plant than you typically get. And so we kind of had to grow up with our customer base. I mean, you see the massive changes that GM, Ford, and Chrysler went through during the 2005 to 2010 period. We had to grow with the same types of systems they did. That's what they expected to see. I mean, I know when, the most recent experience certainly was opening up Mexico. And depending on the morning, we didn't know what language was going to be spoken. You'd have Continental coming in, and the quality person would speak French. You would have Hyundai coming in, and it was Korean. You'd have Toyota come in, and it was Japanese. And certainly the Germans, and every now and then you get an American.
Right. Well, that's interesting. Of all the people that you deal with there, thinking about, like I said, I know late last year Mark took over as president, and that's correct. President, or is it
President?
He became the title of president, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Thinking back, you worked under your father. What are you doing now that really, thinking back, either the good or bad of that, of how you're supporting him, as now he's taking over now, and what is it that you're doing to try to maybe ease that transition and to be there for him, to help him out as well?
Probably the big thing. My father's background, he was also active Army reservist, and his rank was colonel. So when my dad semi-retired, he came to Florida, but he would come back to town, and he'd march in the front door, and he just started at the first desk until he got through the office to the last. So, I need this from you, I need this from you, I need this from you, and I need this from you. It did not really matter what else they were working on and who they were working on it for. He took over, and it was very clear. And so every now and then it was a little bit disruptive. I'm trying to make a conscious decision not to do that, to just be the sounding board, and not interfere, not get in the way.
Right. Yeah. But you're there. You're a phone call away if something comes up, and I'm sure that, like you said, I think every good president, executive needs somebody to bounce ideas and have a conversation with sometimes. But you're available, and that's always a good thing too, I think. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and the airport's not far. I mean, the nice thing about Florida, it's 3 hours from Detroit, so I can get on an airplane at 8:00 in the morning. And I can be there in the action by noon.
By noon, right? Yeah, definitely. Talk about some of the people who, there's a lot of, seems to me like there's a lot of younger people that are running, the plating and finishing operations. What advice if you could think back and, one or two bits of nuggets of advice, wisdom. I know, like I said, you got a lot of good advice from people, but what would you advise some people that are running shops about, how to run it, philosophies they should have, or any other type of advice?
It's a pretty broad question. Yeah, I'm going to go back again to get involved with the association. Take advantage of the networking. Take advantage of the education that the association provides. I can't think of another source better to help you grow your business.